What if one of the most important scientific breakthroughs of the 20th century was nearly ignored because it came from a young woman without a degree? That was the challenge Jane Goodall faced when she documented chimpanzees making tools, a discovery that shook the foundations of science itself. Her path from outsider to world-renowned conservationist is marked by triumph, sacrifice, and heartbreak. This is not only a story of chimpanzees, but of resilience, compassion, and a life devoted to protecting the natural world. Yet behind the admiration and the legacy lies a chapter filled with profound loss and sobering challenges, reminding us that even the most extraordinary lives carry moments of deep sorrow. Early years and formative curiosity. Born in London in 1934, Jane Goodall grew up with a fascination for the living world that surrounded her. From the moment she could walk, she showed an unusual patience in watching animals, from earthworms in the garden to the family dog whose behaviors she recorded with care. A supportive mother encouraged these interests, never dismissing her as childish, but instead giving her books and notebooks to record her findings. Opportunities for women in science during the 1940s and 1950s were scarce, and formal training seemed distant due to financial limits. Still, Jane's determination deepened. She read adventure stories about Africa and dreamed of one day living among wild animals there. That dream seemed improbable for a young girl from a modest background in England, yet it remained unshaken. I personally feel it is powerful to see how her childhood wonder became a lifelong mission. The seeds of patience, curiosity, and respect for animals planted early in her life would later define her path and shape one of the most remarkable scientific careers of the 20th century. Journey to Gombe and first field work. A pivotal moment arrived when Jane traveled to Kenya in 1957, where she met the famed anthropologist Louis Leakey. Impressed by her passion for animals and her sharp observational skills, he invited her to study chimpanzees in what was then Tanganyika, now Tanzania. In 1960, at just 26 years of age, she began her work in the Gombe Stream National Park. Setting up camp on the steep hillsides and dense forests was challenging. For months, the chimpanzees fled whenever she appeared. Instead of giving up, she remained patient, quietly observing from a distance each day. Slowly, the animals began to tolerate her presence. Unlike other researchers of the time, she did not assign numbers to the chimpanzees, but gave them names such as David Greybeard, Flo, and Fifi, recognizing them as individuals with distinct personalities. The world took notice when she documented chimpanzees stripping twigs to extract termites from mounds. Until then, tool-making was considered a defining human trait. Her observation shattered that belief. Yet academia reacted with skepticism, claiming her lack of formal training disqualified her. Reading about those moments, I can sense her courage in standing firm. Her field notes, precise and relentless, ultimately forced the scientific community to accept that humanity's uniqueness was far less absolute than once assumed. Trials, loss, and painful realities. The groundbreaking discoveries did not shield Jane Goodall from criticism. In the early decades of her career, the field of primatology was dominated by men who doubted her abilities and dismissed her methodology as unscientific because it involved emotional descriptions of the chimpanzees. Some went so far as to argue that naming the animals undermined objectivity. Her work faced other obstacles as well. Outbreaks of polio and respiratory diseases struck chimpanzee communities, causing suffering and death. Poachers posed a constant threat, capturing infants for the illegal wildlife trade and often killing mothers in the process. What made these tragedies heavier was that some of the very chimpanzees she had named and grown close to were lost. Their deaths were not only entries in research records, but deeply personal losses, leaving her with grief that never fully faded. Another challenge was the balance between activism and academic credibility. As she began to speak publicly about the destruction of forests and the cruelty of poaching, critics accused her of abandoning science for advocacy. Balancing these two roles was never easy. In my view, this struggle defined her legacy as she demonstrated that scientific knowledge and moral responsibility need not stand apart. She forged a model that continues to influence how research and conservation interact today. Work for animals and advocacy beyond chimps. Although chimpanzees remained central to her work, Jane Goodall expanded her efforts to protect many other species. She became an outspoken critic of the bushmeat trade, which threatened not only chimpanzees, but also countless wild animals across Africa. Her voice joined international campaigns against wildlife trafficking, emphasizing the suffering caused by poachers and the urgent need for stronger protections. Beyond wild habitats, she drew attention to the treatment of animals in laboratories, opposing invasive testing on primates and other species. She also advocated for farm animal welfare, promoting plant-based diets and urging a shift away from industrial practices that inflict immense suffering. Partnerships with organizations worldwide amplified her message, strengthening campaigns that promoted humane treatment of animals on a global scale. Her advocacy extended to endangered species. Protection, speaking out for elephants, rhinos, and marine life. Reports show that through the Jane Goodall Institute and its global networks, her campaigns have supported conservation projects in over 100 countries. I respect how she did not confine her compassion to chimpanzees alone. Her empathy widened the lens of conservation, reminding the world that humanity's moral obligation stretches across all living beings. Major achievements and lasting legacy. The establishment of the Jane Goodall Institute in 1977 marked the beginning of a global conservation network dedicated to protecting chimpanzees and their habitats. What started as a single organization has grown into a presence in more than 30 countries, supporting research, education, and community-led conservation projects. In 1991, she founded Roots and Shoots, a youth-led program that today operates in over 60 countries with thousands of active groups, reaching more than 100,000 young people who are learning to act as responsible stewards of the environment. Recognition of her contributions has been immense. She received the prestigious Kyoto Prize, the French Legion of Honor, and the title of Dame Commander of the Order of the British Empire. She was named a United Nations Messenger of Peace, placing her among the most influential voices of our time. Her influence extends far beyond accolades, reshaping the way scientists approach primatology, inspiring more ethical and empathetic research methods, and pushing conservation models that integrate local communities. Even as she passes the milestone of 90 years of age, Jane Goodall continues to travel, lecture, and use digital platforms to spread her message. I once visited a chimpanzee reserve where every program, every initiative, carried the imprint of her philosophy. It felt as though she was present in spirit, guiding the work from afar. That enduring presence is her legacy, reflections on philosophy and human connection. Throughout her life, Jane Goodall has insisted that animals are not objects of study alone, but individuals with personalities, emotions, and social bonds. This belief has shaped her science and has also altered public perception of animals. challenging old notions of superiority. Her work blends scientific rigor with compassion, creating a perspective that appeals to both scholars and the wider public. Spiritual undertones run through her message as she speaks of the interconnectedness of all living beings and the moral responsibility humans carry in safeguarding the planet. She has written and spoken extensively, her books and lectures serving not only as records of research, but as calls to conscience. I feel her constant emphasis on hope is what makes her message unforgettable. At a time when global crises seem overwhelming, her insistence that change is still possible carries a weight that pure data cannot convey. Current work and future visions. Despite her age, Jane Goodall continues to address urgent issues of our time. She campaigns against deforestation and climate change, emphasizing that the destruction of ecosystems threatens both wildlife and human survival. Her efforts support community-based conservation projects, particularly in Africa, where sustainable development is tied directly to environmental protection. Adaptation to modern communication has kept her voice strong. Through online lectures, podcasts, and digital campaigns, she reaches millions, turning technology into a tool for global activism. These platforms allow her to maintain influence even when travel is limited. Her vision for the future is clear. By empowering young people through Roots and Shoots, she hopes to pass on not just knowledge, but also responsibility. Yet, the urgency is undeniable. Chimpanzee populations have declined by more than half in recent decades, and without decisive action, some groups may vanish entirely in the near future. That sobering reality casts a shadow over her tireless mission, adding a tragic dimension to her life's work. I personally feel encouraged when I see youth-led projects carrying her values forward. A reminder that her impact is multiplying and not fading, even in the face of heartbreaking decline. Jane Goodall's life shows how one vision can change the world. Yet it is also shadowed by the tragic loss of chimpanzees and the uncertainty of their survival. Her legacy stands as both inspiration and warning. Should the next story look at Dian Fossey's even greater sacrifice or David Attenborough's witness to decline? Share your thoughts in the comments and do not forget to like, subscribe, and share this video.